The following is a summary of the Sicha of the night and the day of the third, the night and the day of Erev Shabbos and Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Tetzaveh, the 7th, 10th, and 11th of Adar Rishon Tavshin Nun Beis, printed in Sefer HaSichas Tavshin Nun Beis, page 394. Parshas Tetzaveh is the only Sedra in the Torah after the birth of Moshe where the name of Moshe Rabbeinu is not mentioned. In fact, in Devarim, in the parshas of Ekev, Re'eh, Shoftim, Tetzaveh, and Nitzavim, Moshe Rabbeinu's name is also not mentioned. However, since Devarim is called Mishnah Torah, and this is considered as one long speech of Moshe Rabbeinu, since his name is mentioned at the beginning of Devarim, we can consider it as if it's mentioned in all those Sedras. But until Devarim, after the birth of Moshe, Parshas Tetzaveh is the only Sedra where the name of Moshe Rabbeinu isn't mentioned. And two reasons are given for this. The first reason is because Moshe Rabbeinu passed away on the 7th of Adar, and there is hinted to his passing in this parsha which we read close to Zayin Adar. The second reason is because when HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to destroy Klal Yisrael by the Chet HaEgel, by the sin of the golden calf, Moshe Rabbeinu remonstrated with Hashem, and he said, if you don't forgive then mechenena misifracha asher kasavta, erase me from the book which you have written. We have a rule which is kilalas chacham afilu al t'nai ba, that if a wise person makes a statement, then it comes even if it's conditional, and consequently, even though Hashem did forgive the Yidden, the fact is that Moshe Rabbeinu's name was erased from one parsha, and this is the parsha, Parshas Tetzaveh. However, in both of these reasons, we need to understand something. Firstly, although Moshe Rabbeinu passed away on the 7th of Adar, it also says that Moshe Rabbeinu was born on the 7th of Adar. And in fact, the day of his birth, so to speak, atoned for the day of his death. The Gemara brings about Haman, that Haman was very happy when he cast a lot and it fell in the month of Adar. Why? Because that was the month that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. What he didn't know was this was also the month that Moshe Rabbeinu was born. So why is it that the Torah, so to speak, according to the first reason, doesn't mention Moshe Rabbeinu's name here to hint to the passing of Moshe? And what about the birth of Moshe, which was also on the same day? Also, the second reason of mechenina misifracha, erase me from the book which you have written, that whole story of the Chet HaEgel, of the sin of the golden calf, is in Parshas Kisisa. This parsha of Tetzaveh comes even before that. So how come Moshe Rabbeinu's name is erased from this Sedra and not from a later Sedra? And also, what is the connection between these two reasons? We'll be able to understand this by understanding that in fact the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu had an effect and has an effect on the entire month of Adar. As we mentioned, when Haman cast a lot and it fell in Adar, he was very happy. However, this was turned around by the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu's birthday was also on Zayin Adar. So from here we can see that the power of Moshe Rabbeinu's birthday has the power to change the entire month into a happy month. And it has a very strong mazel, a mila, an advantage which all other months do not have. Now, we actually need to analyze this because from the Gemara it's clear that the birth of Moshe took away, so to speak, the effects of the passing of Moshe. However, from the Gemara it appears that there's a mila, there's an advantage of Adar over all other months. In fact, if we have a look in the Medrash, the Medrash seems to imply the opposite. The Medrash says the following: When Haman Harasha wanted to destroy the Yidden, he said, how am I going to overpower them? Let me cast lots. So he started with the month of Nisan, and he saw that Nisan had the merit of Pesach. So he went to Iyar, and he saw that had the merit of Pesach Sheni. And this is how he went through all the months until he came to the month of Adar. And he saw, there's nothing in the month of Adar that has any merit in it. And so then he went on to check the mazolis, the constellations. And he went through all the constellations and he saw that they were all strong, but the month of Adar, its constellation, its mazel, was that of a fish. And he didn't find any merit in it. And so he was very happy. He said, Adar, ein lo zechus, Adar doesn't have a merit, and its mazel doesn't have a merit. Not only that, in Adar, Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, but he didn't know, of course, that in Adar, Moshe Rabbeinu was born. So he said, just like fish swallow up, so too I will swallow the Yidden up in this month. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to him, Rasha, you wicked one. Fish sometimes swallow up and sometimes they are swallowed up. And now you are going to be swallowed up in this month. So we see from this medrash that in fact the birth of Moshe takes away the effect of the passing of Moshe, but nevertheless the month of Adar is and remains a month that doesn't have any merit and doesn't have any mazel. So how come it was turned around into such a month that has an advantage over every other month of the year? So we can explain this idea as follows. We know that on a person's birthday, their mazel is strong. And in fact, the mazel shines and helps the person. It allows the person to prevail on that day. And so, on the birthday of Moshe Rabbeinu, which Moshe Chazal say, Moshe hu Yisrael v'Yisrael heim Moshe. Moshe is like the entire Jewish people, and the entire Jewish people is Moshe. He is the Nasi Hadar. He is the head of the generation, and therefore he is equivalent to the entire generation. And in fact, since there's an ispashtusa, an extension of Moshe Rabbeinu in every single generation, therefore Moshe Rabbeinu and his extension, in fact, takes in all future generations until the end of all generations. So the birthday of Moshe means the strength of the mazel of Moshe and of the entire Jewish people. And so from that perspective, we can understand why the mazel of the month in which Moshe Rabbeinu is born brings a tremendous strength in the mazel of the Jewish people. And that's why the mazel of the 7th of Adar has an effect on the entire month. And that's what the Medrash says, that Haman did not know that on the 7th of Adar, Moshe Rabbeinu was born. That is the answer to that which the Medrash said beforehand, that Haman said that Adar doesn't have a mazel and the mazel doesn't have any merit. The reason is because the month and the mazel don't need to have merit. Since Moshe Rabbeinu was born on the 7th of Adar, it has something which is higher than any merit in the month and any mazel of the month, because the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu itself causes a tremendous strength of the mazel of Yidden. And in fact, that is also clear in the fact that of all months of the year, which month do we pick in a leap year to be a double month? We pick the month of Adar. In other words, the reason why we have a Shnasa Ibur, a leap year, is in order to bring together the solar and the lunar calendars. In other words, that which is lacking in the Levana, in the moon, we bring to the Chama, we bring to the sun. Now, Yidden count according to the Levana, according to the moon, and the nations of the world count according to the sun. What brings them together? The month of Adar, having another month of Adar, the strength of the mazel of Yidden. And in fact, there are many details in that. First of all, the leap year has 2 Adars, which is the idea of kiflayim letushia, of a double amount of salvation. Also, we have in 2 Adars 60 days. And we know the concept of bitul b'shishim, of the annulment in 60. And this is the idea that anything not good is annulled in the 60 days of Adar. And finally, we have the bringing together of the moon and the sun, which will be, as it says, L'Asad Love, that the Oir HaChama, the Oir HaLavana, the light of the moon, will be like the light of the sun. Sha'asidim lehischadish kamoisa, they will be renewed in time to come. So all this, in fact, is emphasized in the month of Adar, particularly on Zayin Adar, and particularly in this year, when Rosh Chodesh Adar was on Tuesday and Wednesday. Tuesday, that's the day of Huchbul B'I Kitov. It says in the Torah the words Kitov twice, and it was good on Tuesday. That's the double salvation. And also, Wednesday was the day that Nitzlu HaMa'oros, that the luminaries of both the moon and the sun, as they were before the diminution, were hung in the sky. Put Gimel and Dalad together, you get the idea of God. God, of course, is the idea of a mazel tov, a strong mazel, and that's connected with Zayin Adar, because Gimel plus Dalad, 3 plus 4, equals 7. So we see that Zayin Adar, in fact, causes a tremendous strength of the mazel of the entire month. We can explain that even deeper. The mazel of a Jew is the root of his soul above, because only a part of the soul is in the body. The principal part of the soul is transcendence of the body, and that's called the mazel. The word mazel comes from the word nozel. Nozel means liquid flow, and from the root of the soul flows influence and spirit into the body. Chazal say, Ein mazel liYisrael, that there is no mazel for Yidden. What does that mean? That means that although all the nations of the world are guided by the constellations and the stars, however, Yidden can transcend those mazolos. But even Yidden also have a mazel. And in fact, that mazel of the Yidden is higher than all the other mazolos, because their mazel is, instead of saying Ein mazel Yisrael, we can read it Ayin. Ayin is like Hachochme me Ayin Tzemotze. Wisdom is found from Ayin. Ayin is the level which is higher than all the mazolos. And that is actually hinted to in the birth of Moshe, which is also the birth of the Jewish people, because the idea of birth is connected with the very essence of a person, which is higher than their name. It's the idea of the essence of the soul, which is higher than any of the 5 names of the soul. And that's the idea of the strength of the mazel of Yidden, which is connected with the level of Ayin, which transcends any and all of the mazolos. So now we can understand the connection between the birth of Moshe and Purim. Because on Purim, all Yidden were on a level of Mesiras Nefesh. They were ready to give up their lives al Kiddush Hashem, to sanctify Hashem's name. The entire year they didn't have any other thought, chas v'shalom. And the power for this was received from the essence of their soul, which is the idea of the birth of Moshe, the revelation of the essence of Yidden. And that is connected with the idea of Bori Mazoli, the mazel of Adar being healthy and strong. That's the idea of the strength of the essence of the soul. So in other words, since in Adar there was a strength of the mazel of Yidden, which is the idea of ayin, the essence of the soul, that gave Yidden in the times of Purim the ability to reveal the essence of their souls, and hence their ability to display Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice, to sanctify Hashem's name. This actually is also hinted to in the word Adar itself. The word Adar also implies the idea of strength. There's a Gemara in Beitza, page 15b. The Gemara says, a person who wishes that their property should remain in their possession, Yita Bahem Eder, they should plant an Eder tree. It's spelled Aleph Daled Resh. Now this was a special type of tree, and if somebody has this strong, unusual tree in their field, nobody would take it from them. It would always be associated with the person, and hence it would always remain theirs. As it says, Adir B'Amorim Hashem. Klal Yisrael are called Adirim, the strong ones. So the idea of this Eder tree, this strong tree, the strong Yidden, this is the idea of the month of Adar, because it's the month where there's avodah of Mesiras Nefesh, giving over themselves to Hashem, and that comes from the strong mazel of the month of Adar. So the ayin being the mazel, ein mazel Yisrael, the ayin being the mazel of Yisrael, gives Yidden the strength in this month, and hence the connection with Purim. Let's explain further now the connection of the birth of Moshe to Zayin Adar. Zayin Adar, the 7th of Adar, is the 7th day after 7 days in the month of Adar. Now 7 days is a complete week, which is the idea of a world, because the world was created in a week, and it implies the completion, so to speak, of the month of Adar as it appears within the parameters of the world. In fact, the word Adar can be split into two. Aleph, Dar. Aleph is the Alufa Shalom, the commander-in-chief of the world. Dar is the idea of Dira, dwelling. So put the two together and you have Aleph Dar, the insertion and revelation of the commander-in-chief in the world in the Dira B'Tachtonim. And that is all complete on the 7th of Adar, because you have that revelation within the 7 days of creation. And that's related to the birth of Moshe, because when Moshe was born, Nismale Habayas Kulei Oira, the entire house was filled with light. In other words, the birth of Moshe shone light within the entire world, within the world. And this, in fact, was emphasized in Moshe Rabbeinu's lifetime, his erection of the Mishkan, and the complete bringing down of Elokus within the world. As the Medrash states, that when Rosh Chodesh Nisan arrived, and Hashem told the Yidden that told Moshe Rabbeinu that he should erect the Mishkan, so the Yidden were afraid. They were afraid since they said, we've made the Mishkan, we've really worked hard to make it, but when is the Shechina going to come and reveal itself in the Mishkan? So it says, Basi Legani, I came to my garden, Achosi Kala. Omer Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi, Legani in Ksivkan, El Legani Legnuni, Lemokim Shahoya Ikori B'Tchila. In Ha'ara 81, the Rebbe says that, although the Medrash says this in the name of Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi, some people have said in the name of Reb Menachem, and Reb Menachem is the idea of the complete revelation of the Shechina Lamata by the Goyal Rishon and the Goyal Acharon, whose name is Menachem. And the Medrash carries on and says, What does it mean that the Shechina came back? Was the Shechina not originally down here? And here the Medrash continues, as we know from the Maimah Basi Legani, that originally the Shechina was here, but through the Chetz, the sin of Adam Harishon, the Shechina departed, and through the sin of successive generations, departed until the seventh firmament, and through the Tzaddikim, starting with Avraham, and finishing with the seventh generation of Moshe Rabbeinu, which is the most precious, he brought the Shechina back to the earth. And in fact, the setting up of the Mishkan was also in the last week of the month of Adar. And therefore we have, right at the beginning of Adar, the strength of Adar in the Aleph of Adar, and in the continuation in the first 7 days, the idea of Dar, the revelation of Hashem in the world, and of course at the end, the complete setting up of the Mishkan at the end of Adar. However, even as Adar had gone through, at the end of the day, the revelation was only Bamorim, was only in a higher place. That's also hinted to in the fact that the end of this week is on Yud Aleph Adar, Shabbos. Yud Aleph is the idea of 1, which is above number 10, but the main bringing of the Shechina was in fact on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And thereafter in the 12 days in which the Nesim each brought their korbanos, which is the complete revelation of godliness within the world. The 12 combinations of Hashem's name, the 12 months of the year, the 12 borders of the diagonal, all of these refer to the parameters of the world, the idea of bringing a likus within the world. So similarly, the idea is also in the discussion of the strength of the mazel of Yidden in the month of Adar, and how it's connected with the birth of Moshe on the 7th of Adar. Because the strength of the mazel of Yidden is not only the strength of their neshama above, in the mazel above, but it's principally in relation to the bringing down of the essence of the soul down into matters of the body. Neshames begufim, souls in body and in matters of the world, creating the dira, bringing the aleph into the dar through the 7 days of creation, and hence its culmination on Zion Adar. In other words, although the word mazel refers to the essence of the soul above, the ayin which transcends, and that's the idea which empowers Mesiras Nefesh, which goes higher than a seichel. However, the ultimate of Mesiras Nefesh is not to leave the world, but quite on the contrary, it is to reflect Mesiras Nefesh within the world, making a dira b'tachtonim, and that's even reflected in the din that the mazel is so strong that if a yid has a court case with a goy, he should have it even in the month of Adar. So we see even in matters of the world, the ayin of the mazel is strong. And this was reflected also in Purim, where the decree of Haman was annulled, and it wasn't necessary to have Mesiras Nefesh literally in giving up their lives, but quite on the contrary, there was a complete turnabout. And Yidden were able to engage in Torah mitzvahs with light and with joy, with mishta and simcha throughout all the nations of the kingdom, with Mordechai being the Mishnah Lamelech. Nevertheless, at the end of the day, the Yidden remained servants of Achashverosh. In other words, even after the Geula of Purim, we're still in Galus. And not only that, thereafter there was also the Churban of Bayis Sheni and the tremendous suffering in the very long Galus, which all throughout the Yidden had to reveal the essence of their souls with tremendous Mesiras Nefesh, which was a dynamic of transcending the world. However, the principal revelation in the world will be in the world with the building of the third Beis Hamikdash, which will be an everlasting building, and that's connected with the month of Nisan, Kimeitzeis Chamei Eretz Mitzrayim, B'Nisan Nigalu, B'Nisan Asidin Ligoel. So, all the above helps us connect Zayin Adar with Parshas Tetzaveh. Because all the above is hinted to at the beginning of Parshas Tetzaveh. It says, Ve'ata Tetzaveh. Who is Ata? The essence of Moshe. Vav is the idea of bringing that essence down below. That should connect Yidden, that they should have a strong mazel, that their essence should shine in Mesiras Nefesh within the parameters of the world. They should take for you pure olive oil. That's the idea of Mesiras Nefesh, as Chazal say that the olive gave its life over for Kiddush Hashem. Kosis, it's beaten. Yidden are compared to the olive, which only gives its oil through being beaten. So too, by the Goyim who have beaten the Yidden and moved them from place to place, and all the tsar, all the pain and trials and tribulation of Golus has in fact strengthened the Yidden and beaten them into a strong entity and brought out the essence of the Jewish soul. Shemen, oil, which even if you mix it with other liquids, it floats to the top. Zoch, it's pure without any dregs. Lamoir, and it shines the luminary. Lahalis ner tomid, for an everlasting light. Just as the oil shone and lit in the Beis Hamikdash and lit up the entire world, so too our forefathers are called a Zayis Ranon, a fresh olive, because they shine for all. And the idea is not to have Mesiras Nefesh, which goes out of the world, but quite on the contrary. As we've said, that the essence of the soul should shine and be revealed within the world, as reflected on the birth of Moshe on Zayin Adar. And similarly, when we get to the end of the parsha of Tetzaveh, we talk about the Keteres, which is the connection which a Jew has with Hashem as it's revealed through the Neiros, the candles of the menorah. So now we can understand, as we said at the very beginning, the connection between the two reasons why the name of Moshe Rabbeinu is not mentioned in the parsha. The reason which we said that his name is not mentioned is because this is the month that he passed away. That reason is not only because he passed away, but it's principally because he was also born in this month. Because the birth of Moshe, as we have explained, refers to the very essence of Moshe, higher than his name. And that's why it's connected with Ve'ata, meaning your very essence. And since the birth of Moshe is connected, as we said, with all Yidden, and therefore it caused the strength of the mazel of all Yidden, therefore, next to the parsha of Zayin Adar is mentioned the Mesiras Nefesh of Moshe for all Yidden. Mechenina. Moshe Rabbeinu says, erase me. His name should not be mentioned. Why? Because you have the level of Va'ata, the revelation which is higher than a name, the essence of Moshe, the essence of Yidden, as they are one with Hashem. And in fact, the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu said Mechenina was because the essence of Moshe is connected with the essence of Yidden, and that was the reason why he had Mesiras Nefesh for the whole of Klal Yisrael, saying, I don't want my name to be there if they're not there. This is also connected with an event that took place recently in this shechuna, in this neighborhood, a Kiddush Hashem Barabim, where a Jewish woman was killed al Kiddush Hashem. We do not know why these things happen. Why does Hashem make it like this? A young woman with young children. And nevertheless, there was a tremendous Kiddush Hashem publicly We shout and are in pain over the length of the Golus, ad Mosai. We demand the Geula, and then those who repose in the dust will arise, starting from tzaddikim who get up immediately, and in between them and at the very beginning of them, this righteous woman who is killed al Kiddush Hashem, she will stand up, a soul in body, and continue to educate and raise her children to Torah and Chuppah joyously. L'cholarosh. But we must ponder here the great Kiddush Hashem that happened. Chazal tell us of the greatness of giving up one's life in Kiddush Hashem, and especially if it's done publicly, and especially in the Shechuna, in this neighborhood where you have the Beis HaKnesses of the Rebbe. The idea of Kiddush Hashem, which we find by the Beis Yosef. The Beis Yosef, it says, who is the author of the Shulchan Aruch, because of his greatness, he merited that he was to be killed al Kiddush Hashem, but for a reason which, because of his great level, there was a reason which caused him not to be able to do that. He did not merit to die al Kiddush Hashem, even though thereafter he merited to write the Shulchan Aruch, which became a guide for all Yidden in all generations. From this we can see that the zechus, the merit of giving up one's life al Kiddush Hashem, is even greater than writing the Shulchan Aruch. And in fact, when Moshe Rabbeinu says, Mechenena misifrecha, again we have the idea of Mesiras Nefesh higher than the level of Moshe being connected with Torah. Moshe is even willing to give up his name in the Torah in order to have Mesiras Nefesh for Klal Yisrael. And in addition to the Mesiras Nefesh of this Isha Tzidkonis, is also the Mesiras Nefesh of her small children, which she has left to others to raise and educate. And in fact, their Mesiras Nefesh on one level is greater than hers. It's a Mesiras Nefesh higher than a Mesiras Nefesh. Nevertheless, after all the tremendous things we've said about Mesiras Nefesh, we've already fulfilled our obligation of this more than enough through all the things that have gone place until this generation. And we cry ad Mosai, until when? Hayitachen, that after the whole lengthy Golus, we needed the Mesiras Nefesh of this young woman and her children. And even if you want to say that Hashem has nachas ruach from this Mesiras Nefesh, it's enough the Mesiras Nefesh that Yidden are in Golus even one more minute, more than 1900 years, and Adayin Leibar Mashiach has not come yet. We finished all the matters that we need to do for Mashiach to come, and nevertheless there still passes a week, a day, even a moment, and Mashiach has not come. And then we have this matter of a Mesiras Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem. Our only comfort is that this should be the last Mesiras Nefesh that should take place. And in the merit of this Isha Tzidkonis and all the righteous women of the generation, we should merit the Geula, where there will in fact be the complete Kiddush Hashem. The lesson that we can take from all the above is as follows. Coming from the 7th of Adar, where the strength of Yidden's mazel is very strong, the essence of the soul, as it's revealed in the world, is strong. We should add, therefore, in Torah and mitzvahs, in hafotz and spreading Yiddishkeit and Chassidus, in order to bring bepoil ubegilui the geula. Stated somewhat differently, the avodah of the month of Adar is to bring the geula through Mashiach Tzidkenu, who is called an Adir, a mighty one, and then the mazel of Yidden will shine, being that they are also called Adirim, together with the Adir Mamorim Hashem, with Hashem. And the parashas of Adar we read about, in the month of Adar, we read all the parashas which are connected with the Mishkan, and of course their completion is in the third Beis HaMikdash. In Truma and Tetzaveh we read about the Melacha, the building of the Mishkan and the Big Day Kahuna. In Parshas Kisisa, we read about the lifting up of the Bnei Yisrael's head, which will ultimately be at the time of Geula. In Vayakhel Pekudei, we read of the building of the Mishkan B'Poel, Vayakhel, the gathering of all Yidden together, and of course the Minyan Nasiri, the 10th number, which will take place of Pekudei when Mashiach will come. And Vayikra, Hashem calling to every single Yid, that every single Yid will know Hashem. And Tzav in a way of Zirus, that it should happen quickly. And Shmini, the Tefillah of Moshe Rabbeinu V'hinoyam, that the Shechina should rest in the work of our hands. And in fact, in this leap year, even the parasha of Shmini im Lamiloim we read also in the month of Adar. V'hi Rotzain, that we shouldn't have to wait till the month of Nisan to have the Geula, but already now, B'Poel Mamish, we should have the coming of Mashiach. And when we have 2 months of Adar, of course, that adds in the tremendous yearning for the month of Nisan, the 60 days in which we can yearn for the month of Nisan when we have the Geula. And of course, there's a special advantage in this year when Yud Aleph Nisan finishes the 90th year, which the capital of the 90th year finished, V'hi Noyam, the idea of the bringing of the Shechina, the completion of the 7th generation, where the efforts of Moshe were completed. V'chein Elonu, that on Yud Aleph Adar should be the completion of Yud Aleph Nisan, the Yom Ashta Yosa Yom, the Nasi of Bnei Osher the Rebbe, Me'osher Shmeina Lachmoi, B'toivel Vashem and Ragloi, as is explained in Parshas Tetzaveh, and at the beginning of Tisisa of Shemen Hamishcha, as it says about Mashiach, Matzasi David Abdi B'Shem and Koshi Meshachtiv, through Mashiach Tzidkenu, who is the Rosh B'nei Yisrael, the Moshe Rabbeinu will come and anoint Melech HaMashiach, that he should come and be revealed, Takef Umiyad Mamash.